Hey everybody, are we live? I think we're here. I think we are live right now. And I think we're going to start it off with just by reading this. I'm a 55-year-old Canadian. I'm married, father to four, university educated, and perfectly bilingual. I'm an engineer, solving problems for 35 years. I'm a volunteer hockey coach and an avid outdoorsman. According to Trudeau, I'm an extremist who needs to be dealt with. Hashtag Trudeau must go. I'm here with the one and only Marty up north. And I gotta say, Marty, that's
Guys,
a
hi everyone.
that is a great tweet on its own. It's a banger tweet. It says, "Hey, I'm a regular person. I'm an outdoorsman," and according to Trudeau, he thinks I'm an extremist.
Yeah,
So,
and I don't claim, I didn't invent the tweet or the style of the tweet. I've been on media platforms for decades, YouTube for a decade, and Twitter probably 3, 4 years now. So, of course, you've seen those kinds of things. I definitely do not claim any ownership of that tweet. It's something I saw. What's important is why I felt like tweeting that, and I think that's what we want to talk about. Because I've had people say that you stole the format of the tweet. It's like, well, that's like telling me that my telethon's not original or my garage sale is not original. I mean, it's
mhm.
pretty hard to have an original idea. Same with the hashtag itself. There's people that say the hashtag existed before. It's, in my opinion, it's not the hashtag that's viral. It's the sentiment behind the tweet and what people decided to do with it.
Yeah, and there's always going to be critics. I mean,
Sure.
it's something that I've noticed, especially in the world of Canadian politics. The second you start to do something that's actually effective, the second you start to do something that people are paying attention to, all the haters, all the critics show up, and I honestly just treat it like they're there to they're designed to be there to get under your skin.
In the
So.
political world, but I also, it's also an interesting, weird Canadian characteristic.
Hmm.
Not that we're haters, but I've traveled to the U.S. and Canada a lot. If an American suddenly has a nice whatever BMW in his driveway, his neighbors will go, "Hey, John, nice job. Looks like life is good for you. Nice car."
Hmm.
Whereas in Canada, we have a different. We'll say something like, "Oh, nice car," in sort of a passive aggressive tone, and so we don't celebrate ourselves. We don't celebrate. We're Canadians. We have a different culture than Americans. But to your point, in the political spectrum, it can get pretty ugly with haters. Or it's a different phenomena, but it's an observation. Yeah.
I'd love to come back to that because I'm personally, I kind of tripped and stumbled and fell into politics. I joined the PPC in 2019. Like many other PPC people joining at that point, we were very naive to the nature of politics. And since then, especially during the pandemic over the past couple of years, I gotta say I've been really disappointed in like the character as a whole of Canadians. And I think you kind of touched on something really important there, which is this sort of passive aggressive sort of. It really exists in Toronto. This I can't be happy for you. Like I'd rather not be happy for you. I'd rather kind of just nag at you,
Right.
sort of mentality. But thankfully, with all that's going on, I think a lot of a new kind of a new not brand, a new breed of Canadians is being put in the forefront. So.
Well, I'm sure it's a new breed, but hopefully it is a new breed. But I also think we're just bringing back. Canadians have a persona. We have, and some of it is coming back. I think during the last 3 years,
Hmm.
maybe even seven, something got buried and it's coming back. I was talking to somebody else the other day. I mean, we were talking about hockey. Almost everything comes back to hockey when you're a Canadian. But I was talking about, the weird nature of Canadians. I witnessed the first NHL Classic, between Edmonton and Calgary outdoors, and it was a day where it was minus 32. It's minus 32, and I'm outside with 20,000 other Canadians. We're cracking beers and they're freezing while we're drinking them, and I'm looking around us going like, who does that? And so we're Canadians, and we love to be together. We love to help each other, and this whole period of the last 3 years, dehumanized us and de-Canadianized us. I think to an
Ooh.
extent.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah, I like that. De-Canadianized us. That was a great
Yeah.
way to put it. And I think to summarize like what de-Canadianize is, I would say it's something like we went from a very high trust society to a low trust society. Like they really thrust all this stuff. Don't trust your neighbor. Don't trust your family members. Don't trust, anyone unless the
And you
TV
got
told
a
you.
politician like, I think he did it on purpose. I'm not going to mince words. I think Trudeau did some of this on purpose. He took advantage of that good nature of Canadians. Um, for instance, like when you look in this whole vaccine thing, and it's important because it's kind of the genesis of my tweet. But
Mm.
Canadians, a lot of Canadians wanted to do the right thing. So the idea of protecting each other matters to Canadians. So it did resonate. There are Canadians who said, "No, I'll take the vaccine to protect grandma or somebody else," and we heard that over and over. But then it went too far, because then suddenly there's still some Canadians who for very valid reasons chose not to get vaccinated. And I don't need to get into that. It's your right as a Canadian. And now we were, and Trudeau was demonizing that. So he's trying to play both sides, to and then if I look back, the good-natured Canadians feel abused, and now the minorities feel abused, and the good-natured Canadians who historically protected minorities are coming together and going back to protecting the Canadians. So some real solid Canadian values are coming right back up. So that's
Yeah,
that's
it's
that's an observation of the last 7 days. I mean, I've been in like I said, I didn't say it yet, but um,
you're in the
I don't
hot
want. I'm
seat.
not the leader of the movement. I just did something that resonated, but by my position where I'm at today, I've had center seat to something incredible. I've been bombarded, and I've learned more about Canadians, politics, Twitter, everything in the last 3 days. I mean, you said you were sort of naive going into politics. Man, I thought I was a sophisticated YouTuber, Twitter, and I had a good sense of politics. And I realized, oh man, I was naive as well. I mean, it's complicated and dirty. Politics is dirty.
And can you give me examples of the last 7 days of like is that just speaking to the criticism you've received or the fact that
Oh no,
Jerry
it's
Butts
speaking
is
to
tweeting
so
about
many.
you?
No, it's speaking to so many things. I mean, how to break that down? Rephrase the question. Ask me a question.
um, you mentioned the sort of ugliness of politics that maybe you've experienced over the past week. Would you say there's a specific moment that you've had over the past week that really made you think, "Wow, like this gives me an icky feeling. This gives me a feeling
Yes.
of yeah." What was the worst
Yeah. So
feeling of that to
let,
you?
let, let me let's give a little bit of context. So
Sure.
my tweet goes out, and the tweet resonates with people. That's fine. That's great. It resonates with people, and they're similar to me.
Hmm.
And then I'll say this. I mean, I made it through, like all Canadians. I was affected by COVID. I had some bad moments in COVID, but I have to be honest. I made it through pretty unscathed. I'm fairly resilient, and I live in the mountains, so I kept my wits about myself. But so in the first day after the tweet went viral, I started getting bombarded by Canadians, and the first thing that happened to me is I had Canadians reach out to me and tell me their stories. And so
Mm.
the first moment was like, wow, I was hearing stories that were just devastating. People who, veterans who got dishonorably discharged for not wanting to get the vaccine, business owners who were harassed by police and hit with summons day in and day out because they resisted and stayed open, mothers who couldn't see their kids play hockey, whatever. And so I had all those stories. And so then suddenly I was like, I connected with 1,000 other Canadians. And then there's this pivotal moment where Gerald Butts gets a hold of this. Somebody must have tapped Gerald on the shoulder and say, "Hey, Gerald, there's something happening." And Gerald goes out on the internet and says, along the lines of, "I'm aware of this, and it's all, don't worry about it, folks. It's all Russian conspiracy and it's bots." So me naively, I reach out to Gerald in a public forum saying, "Hey, Gerald, I think I'm the guy who started this, and man, this is real. There's people that are impacted by this, and I think you should hear their story." So I reach out publicly on Twitter, and he blows me off. So then, I picked up my phone, and if you followed the timeline, I went in the backyard. I made a little video because now I was taking it personal. I'm like, come on, Gerald, you got to listen. You got to listen to these people. There's people that have been genuinely hurt by policies of this government. So I do a video to try and make it even more personal, and I go online and show that video, and then Gerald comes over the top and says, well, I have no doubt that Martin is real, but the question now is who's paying him, who's motivating him. So first realization, Canadians have been hurt. Policies of this government have hurt Canadians, and I'd say almost on purpose, which is terrible. But if I give them the benefit of the doubt, they were still, a lot of Canadians were hurt. So then, and then you realize that Gerald and others, I had engagement. If you did see some of my Twitter timeline, I had like almost a battle with Dean Blundell. Is it Dean? I can't remember.
Oh, Dean. Yeah.
Yeah, don't go there, right? I mean, and the man, is that guy ever, what's the word? Venomous, toxic. So, and then that some brief moment, because he was on the same line as Gerald.
Which is very interesting. The fact that like a former shock jock who was like a popular morning show host in Toronto all of a sudden has the exact same opinion as Jerry Butts of like the Liberal Party. Like it's very interesting.
Yeah, and then he tells me, he's like, well, I'm only in, he's defending himself, saying I'm not I hate Trudeau. Look at this story I once wrote about Trudeau, so I don't like Trudeau. I'm like, I don't believe you anymore, and anyways, I don't even want to talk about Dean. I just blocked him. It's ugly. And so the realization of the machine that is suppressing the voice of Canadians was a shocker, a huge shocker for me. So that I knew there was something like that, but now I'm no longer naive. It's like, wow, it's a big machine. So then the third thing is, so who's going to come in to the rescue? Who's going to actually, this is a story. Like in my mind, I'm like, there's, let's round it up, but there's 100,000 Canadians who've been hurt. Somebody should, isn't that a story worth telling? And nobody. Like, so it's guys like you that came out and questioned me. Americans came on board first, but independents, right? So Viva Frey down in the U.S. wanted to talk. He's an exiled Canadian, I guess.
He lives in Montreal, doesn't he? He's not in the States, or he's not in Canada.
Well, he lives in Montreal. I think he jokes about being exiled in Florida. I think literally he's been in Florida, sort of unable to fly back to Canada, or decided now he's gonna,
Right.
But he's a Canadian, and so the independents. But it was mostly podcasts like this, the odd story from independents. But then it climbed a little bit, because after the true independence, the biggest network, what would you call the next level? I mean, the biggest outlets would have been Brian Lilly did a little piece, and he's, and I'm not an Easterner, so I gather Lilly is not a Trudeau fan.
yeah, he's a bigger deal out here. That's Sun News, right?
Yeah. So Brian and a few other people, but still, and then people on Twitter have been trying to reach out to people, to journalists, saying like, don't you want, like, you could make a name for yourself. We played almost a joke. I mean, not a joke, but I've seen lately how this Rachel Gilmore girl was trying to sort of become relevant. So I told everybody, take the tweet that you made, your post, and now put it in her timeline and tag her. And so if I go down her tagline, she literally has 1,000 people who sent her their story, and she's still not running with it. What did she run with yesterday? She ran with a story about chickens and NyQuil. So I'm like, okay, whatever, you're irrelevant, then you're done. But if somebody wanted to legitimately find a story, so that is nobody interested in stories? I'm baffled. Yeah,
that's quite the experience. And what sticks out to me is, first you mentioned the first moment of feeling devastated, or feeling the icky feeling, is probably when Jerry Butts is like, hey, he has a way on Twitter of being very dismissive, condescending, and having a lot of contempt for anyone who disagrees with him. He doesn't say like, "Oh, I don't disagree with you. I'm just going to like subtly dehumanize you and tell you that you're being manipulated by somebody." It's very icky. It's very a gross feeling. But and then yeah, on top of that, the media not caring, the media not caring, the media not making any sort of movement to cover a real story. And in many ways, that's the reason I initially even got involved in politics. I just saw that our media was actually getting to a dangerous degree of being biased and actually not covering real stories. And I thought, wow, this trend isn't going to reverse itself, especially if the media is not talking about it, right?
Yeah. Now the interesting thing now we're a week into it, and it's some things can't be ignored. I mean, the other thing I saw that was the manipulation behind the scene of Twitter and the algorithms and the hashtag itself. And again, I don't believe that is not coincidental. There's powers at work there, whether it's Gerald Butts calling or somebody calling Twitter, but there is some manipulation, or if it's somebody at Twitter who takes it upon themselves to do it, there's manipulations. Thank God there are independent websites that allow you to track data. And so, people were saying it's only 500,000, and there's evidence that it's 2 million retweets right now. So anyways, but the manipulation was interesting.
Yeah, and specific to that, it like Twitter has stopped kind of like posting the hashtag, or that's kind of like disappeared, right?
It disappeared for a while from the trending screen.
Right.
But then it came back. But then they play other games, So if you type in, so the hashtag that I was using is Trudeau must go. Now they do funny things. If you try to type it in, it'll go Trudeau must go, and it auto finishes on. So Trudeau must go on. So then if you're not catching yourself doing that and going backspace, you're retweeting with Trudeau must go on. And so there's these battles. Now that can be perfectly legit because a group of people can create their own hashtag. Perfectly legit. But then I had fun. Gerald Butts accuses me of being a bot factory, and then 3 days later we're being attacked by bots. I mean, they're so blatant. You see people that just criticize tweets and retweets, and then you go, oh wow, 3 followers and 0 followed backs or whatever, following 3 people. I saw one with 0, 0.
And I mean, the numbers don't matter as much, but what I think is very telling of that and very ironic is what was great about this little organic trend and campaign that happened is you have Canadians showing their faces. Yes. Showing their faces and saying, hey, I am a regular Canadian and Trudeau thinks I'm an extremist. And the thing is, you're right. Something that I don't even pay attention to too many different people on Twitter, especially when they're kind of like leftist attacking me or whatever. Because, yeah, you go to their profile, they don't have a face picture. Have you noticed this? If you've been on Twitter, if you guys have been on Twitter for some time in the Canadian political world, you'll always find there's some like liberal supporting Twitter account user, and they're like, hey, I'm like a liberal in Alberta. It's like always some like anonymous account. They claim to be in Edmonton or Alberta, and they're following the Liberal Party of Canada's like marching orders to a T.
Twitter should implement some sort of system where you have to validate that you're a human being. I don't know how that's possible, but I'm beginning to think that there is a real mass of fake accounts on there that are being manipulated. But anyways, that was interesting to witness that.
I do want to move the conversation along a bit here, because this whole scenario reminds me of something that a friend of mine told me, which is everything in Canadian politics is so controlled. And he used the example of Pebblegate, or the scenario where somebody threw like pebbles near Justin Trudeau, like when he was getting on his campaign bus or whatever. And this person was saying, like, it just goes to show, like, that little scenario just blew up into epic proportions. And it just goes to show how controlled everything is here in the kind of Canadian political landscape. And I think this is another great example where you tweeted out, all you did was tweet out a banger tweet. It was just a great tweet. It was, it exposed the absurdity of the narrative, which is, Trudeau thinks that all of these people are extremists when in reality they're regular, hardworking people. I mean, and what better than you, Marty, to start the trend? You have an outdoors channel, like YouTube
I almost
channel.
didn't even tweet that tweet because I think 5 days earlier, my tweets lately have been boring. I mean, I was originally known for my COVID analysis, and I want to move on past COVID. So my recent tweets have been boring, and I said, hey, see you guys later. I'm going on a 4-day hike, which got cut short. So, but I want to come back to your comment on, yeah, everything's controlled, and now again, I'm becoming so skeptical now. I don't even think that Trudeau singing Bohemian Rhapsody is a coincidence. That had to be like, are politics in Canada so nefarious now that somebody said, hey, this is a way to change? And I know it is, because I actually published on one of my posts I found a website that tracks the organic growth of the hashtag, and then you can see it climbing up, and you can see the dips at night when Canadians are sleeping, and then there's this sudden dip, and it absolutely correlates with a new trend called whatever, Bohemian Rhapsody. And so, and everybody in the room that day when Trudeau was singing had to be vetted. There's no way that comes out by accident. There's no way.
Well, I mean, I don't want to participate too much in the,
Yeah.
okay. But that's an interesting theory. That's an interesting strategy to bring up, to change the subject, so to speak. Hey, let's just kind of post something kind of humiliating about Trudeau. But he's a good singer, right? So his supporters will still like him. I wanted to kind of ask how you got into sort of the Twitter sphere, and more specifically, I was looking at some of your interview with Viva, and I get the impression, I think you said something along the lines of, I try to encourage people to, use their critical thinking skills, and you try to, change people's minds. And I think that, the tweet that went viral is a good example of that, of, hey, assuming that a liberal might read it, hey, I'm a normal person, and Trudeau thinks I'm an extremist. I wanted to ask, because I came in, being very hopeful to change people's minds as well. And it's certainly an uphill battle. It's certainly a challenge, and especially after COVID, it's a lot of misinformation to fight. It's a lot, we're basically fighting the biggest propaganda campaign that's ever happened in human history. So I guess I want to ask, kind of, what is your philosophy when it comes to that? What is your sort of strategy, I guess, when you do try
You're
to change
asking me a
minds?
great question. Actually, if you'll bear with me, I'll say a couple of things. So,
Take your time.
So a democracy, some people will argue that a democracy, and I'll wrap it up, but some people will argue that the democracies have been around since the Greek times. But I think our modern democracy, like the American ones, is very different. It's been modernized. It is the will of the many, which can be scary because we have minorities, right? And so we could overthrow minorities all the time. But we've put things in place to protect the minorities, things like our Constitution and so forth. And then the democracy works better when we have an informed public that votes. So that's one of the tenets of our democracy. But then you also look around. Our democracy has evolved to, ours in particular has somebody in power, which has a role, and they make the rules. We have somebody in the opposition that holds that group accountable, or tries to. And then we have a fifth estate, the journalists, who are supposed to hold both of those groups accountable, but the journalists have a role to educate the public, to properly educate the public, so that the public, when it's time to do their voting, is educated. And then there's a fourth group, which is the engineers like me, and the lawyers and the accountants who get consulted by the government, the public, and the journalists, so that we can provide an informed opinion on policies and things like that. And when I look at what's going on lately, it's like all four levels have collapsed. And I'm trying to take advantage. So one of the pieces, I take my role seriously as an academic expert. I'm not an academic, I'm an expert. I've been working in oil and gas for 30 years, and I'm an engineer. So my role is to I should be consulted and upon. But now with Twitter, I get the opportunity to play that role the way I think it's designed, which is my job is to help educate in that whole cycle of our democracy. And the examples for me have lately, like I said, were COVID. So my job was, if somebody said something like, "Hey, whatever, 80% of Calgarians are already vaccinated," I'm go, whoa, 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 think about this critically. Like, there's a million of us in Calgary, and you're saying that in the last 3 weeks we vaccinated 1 million people. Does that mean that everybody took a week off from work? Because if you do 1 million people, then I'll say to somebody, okay, how long does it take to vaccinate someone? 5 minutes, perfect. 5 minutes. So 1 million people would take 5 million minutes, and have 5 million minutes expired in the last 3 weeks. So I use that. That's my platform on Twitter. That's what I've been just trying to do, is literally educate, play my role as a to help make sure that the public is informed so that they can do their job when it's time to vote. And for me, being in the middle of this storm has shown me that the powers that be at the government are trying to suppress that education. The electorate takes it willingly. There's a whole manipulation going on. If I try to do something, I get blocked. I mean, I'm on my third Twitter account, because if I get too close to a certain narrative that's deemed inappropriate, I get zapped. And when I got to the habit where, when I was talking about COVID, I made sure that I would source my data from a government website and literally put the citation and the link of where I got my data. And the moment I forgot to put the link, somebody went, bang, you're misinformation, and I got canceled. So does that answer your question? Like, where are we going with this one? But that's my role in Twitter.
Yeah, no, education, being patient, and you feel like it's your duty to educate people. And I think that is a major challenge, and something that does need to happen, because there's just such a divide that's grown, not even just in Canada, but across the world. People live in two different realities now. And that's
Well,
especially the
and there's
case.
a weird paradox. The internet was supposed to make us more intelligent, because it was supposed to give us more information at our fingertip, but it didn't make us more intelligent. I'm beginning to question, and I'm beginning to think it's making us dumber.
hmm hmm Yeah, and with internet technology, when I tell people, if you want to really understand the world, you have to really meditate on how the capacity to produce propaganda, distribute propaganda, target propaganda, and measure how effective the propaganda is has never been this high, in terms of how efficient the propaganda machine is.
I mean, I'll give you another example, Greg. Like, it's just a weird personal hobby of mine, but I contribute to Wikipedia,
Mm.
and I'm not I'm contributing to Wikipedia in the outdoor form. Sometimes I see a mountain in my travels, and I go, there's not a lot of information on that mountain, or there's no picture. So so I got into that habit. But and even on something as innocent as the name of a mountain, there's an argument. I used to think that Wikipedia was always very self-regulated, but there's people who will erase what you put and put something else. And so during the trucking convoy, I was witness to the manipulations going on, for instance, with the GoFundMe Wikipedia site. It was crazy. So we're in that information age where it's hard to discern what's real and what's not. And I'm not going to give up on that. The discussion we had, there's no perfect way to detect a bot, but we have sort of tricks and things like that. But some people, if I talk about this whole topic to my wife, she has no idea. Even in a household like mine, with me and 3 sons that are engineers, I have a wife and daughter that are not interested in this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think the majority of Canadians are like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think a common thing that's happened, which is like really, really shouldn't be the case, but is becoming very common, and we don't really talk about it in these terms. But what you do, doing research, trying to explain things to people, trying to tell people stories of what's actually happening, that's the job of a journalist.
Yes.
Why is somebody like yourself, who already has a lot on your plate, already has a day job and all this stuff going on. Why are you doing the job of a journalist? Why am I doing the job of a journalist? Like at the trucker convoy, for example, I interviewed hundreds of people, and I didn't plan on doing that. I went there the first day, captured a few interviews, and then when I saw how the news was covering it, I was like, wow, I guess I will interview people because the media clearly has no interest in documenting what's going on here. So,
Well, and I'm feeling the same way. I mean, in a sense, I feel guilty because I'm leaving tomorrow and I got to go hiking. And now I've already had people say, "Oh, please, Marty, don't leave," or you need to keep doing what you're doing. And I'm feeling guilty, and I'm feeling the obligation because I discovered something to do it. But I'm also discouraged because nobody else is doing it. It's a I was when you were talking, I was remembering the role like of the journalist. It's such a weird role nowadays. I mean, in the good old days, if somebody said it's raining outside and somebody else said no, it's not, well, the journalist's job was to stick his head outside the window and see which one was telling the truth and who wasn't. And now the journalist picks the side of one guy and says, yeah, it's raining outside. That's it. Like
Yeah.
they're not investigating.
It's a whole occupation. It's like a whole class of people that are shaping the way people think. And historically, I don't really know if that's always been, like to use like the fall of Rome as an example. Like, was there an equivalent to a journalist back then? I don't know. Maybe this is kind of like a new class of state propagandists that we need to deal with, because back people like to make comparisons to the 20th century. All they really had was brochures and flyers and posters back then. We got
or you go to
more
the
sophisticated stuff
even
now.
at the end of World War II or during World War II, you'd go to the movie theater and the beginning clip would be a little bit of censored images from the war somewhere. Yeah, no, society's evolving. We're going to evolve these things. I mean, like I look at yesterday was the first time I'd ever became the target of a meme. I was like, wow,
Okay.
that's new. Yeah, I became the target of a meme.
You should take it as a compliment.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then my wife said, well, that's terrible. I'm like, oh God, compared to what Trudeau gets subjected to, let's say. And she's like, well, we never used to do that to the other prime ministers. I'm like, yeah, but that's because the technology to do it to other prime ministers didn't exist. So, you couldn't do a meme of John Diefenbaker very easily in 1958.
Sure.
So
that's a good point, but I would say Harper got it pretty bad. That's kind of actually when I first started to really follow politics for the first time, because I remember like I would look on my Facebook feed and I thought it was fascinating how effectively they were vilifying him to make him seem like Hitler or whatever. But yeah, I mean, let's go back to this trend. Let's go back to your tweet, and how crazy is it that they are trying to squash something that is just so simple? Like, their whole narrative hangs on this idea that everyone who doesn't like Trudeau is literally crazy. And the second that regular Canadians just start saying, hey, I'm not crazy, sound the alarm bells, rearrange the Twitter algorithms.
It's not that the Canadians aren't saying... my observation after reading the tweets, not reading the tweets, the Canadians are saying something innocent. I'm not who you are, or I'm not who you say I am. They're saying, that's one thing they're saying in that short blurb. But when you talk to them, they're hurt. The ones that are doing that are actually, most of them are hurt. They're fed up and they're tired of being, of feeling dehumanized and demonized and decanadianized. And we've invented a word. So they have to squash that, they being the Liberals, because their message, well, almost every government's message is we're here for the people and our job is to make the lives of the people better. And independent of the tactics they use, I'm naive again. If you did, because in my world as an engineer, the compressor is running one way today, and then I go and make a tweak, and then the next day it doesn't run as good, and I made the wrong tweak. In my world, I just go, put it back the way it was yesterday. Okay, done. And no harms. We tried to improve it. It didn't work. Put it back the way it was. In politics, they can't do that. They can't do that. I mean, I'm joking at them. There's collapses of the airport and something's not working at the airport, and the joke is, well, go back to the way you did it 5 years ago, and hopefully it'll be, bring it back the way it was. So the Liberals, any government wants to promote something, but this government in particular went too far, used some nasty techniques, but fundamentally hurt people, really hurt people, and so that's the story they have to hide. In a perfect world, they should look at this and go, oh my God, we fucked up. We hurt a lot of people, and we're very sorry. We're going to adjust. And they could salvage it that way, but they're being advised differently, and they're not going to go down that path. They're just going to try and bury it. So some of the stories that are being buried are ridiculous. Like, I didn't know this. We Canada dishonorably discharged like 10,000 soldiers. And that's not even a story.
That's a lot.
Like, people who put their lives on the line for the country got dishonorably discharged. Like, I talked to a guy who got blown up by an IED, and then he was not out of combat, he called it. He was still active, still capable, still working, but then he refused the jab. And he said, and I'm refusing it based on, we were injected 10 years ago in whatever, for some other conflict in Kosovo or whatever. And we all got sick from that one, and I'm not doing it. And the government tried to say to those guys, well, no, you're disobeying an order. And they're saying, no, it's an illegal order. Anyways, they got discharged. And I hear the story from that guy. He's like, I still have 5 years left, and now I'm devastated, and I'm on this shitty pension, and my government is fighting me. I'm like, wow, that's insane. But that's just one example. So, the government just can't admit that they made a mistake and go back on it. That's just an observation. It's a theory. It's a theory, but it's a lot of governments. But then the flaw of my theory would be, are other governments, because other governments did the same thing, will some other governments be able to admit an error? Or, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's did CBC write a headline? Did Global News write a headline? 10,000 people discharged. And it's very ironic, these the liberal media and the very popular trend of being a nice liberal Canadian. If you want to find a group of people who are just treated like trash, absolute trash, and dismissed constantly in this country, look no further than Canadian veterans. They are treated like absolute trash by the state, by major institutions, by politicians. Like, politicians will pander to them. And then the worst example of this is Justin Trudeau saying to his first name is Brock, I forget his last name, but he talked to a veteran.
More than
Yeah, the guy has one leg.
Yeah.
The guy has one leg, and you said to his face, "You're asking for more than we're able to give." Like, that's
and it didn't stick on
sociopathic.
Trudeau.
That
I remember witnessing that moment, thinking, "Oh, you're going down for this one," and then he didn't go down.
Yeah, and then of course the media is always carrying his water for him, right? It's like, oh well, why telling a veteran with one leg he's asking for too much is actually a learning experience, and it was actually, they will always twist it one way or another. But sorry, I don't know what to say right now, because what you brought up is really making me angry.
Well, and I have lots of friends who are veterans. It's a community that I hang out with, and I have friends that were in Afghanistan and places like that, and came back. It's no joke, man. We were losing something like 22 veterans to suicide per month, in the years immediately following Afghanistan. So, for the veterans out there that are listening today, I've heard some of your guys' stories. Sorry. And man, you guys you're right, Greg. You guys got it bad. Yeah, I'm pissed off. We need to go to a happier subject, because I'm pissed off.
Okay, so let's talk about what do I want to ask you about? We were talking about the media. We were talking about how they're trying to put a lid on this hashtag. Maybe let's talk about the future. And
Well,
oh,
let's
just
talk about Europeans maybe a little bit, because there's
okay.
been some. Have you seen some of the comments lately? So Trudeau's stunt in London backfired. So when we
Mm,
talk about journalism, I worked in the UK and I love British journalists. There are still British journalists who go after politicians regardless of their stripes. They do, they're known for that. So the tabloid thing in the UK is a big one. So I applaud some of the and so this movement is trending, and it made, there's been some interesting comments coming out of the UK from some British politicians, not only about Trudeau's behavior during the singing, but they've noticed that Canadians are speaking out through this movement. So yeah. But go on. Let's pick another topic, or let's move on.
yeah, and I think that speaks to how terrible Canadian news media is when foreign media outlets do a much better job of actually telling what's going on in Canada.
Yeah.
But let's talk about one more sort of heavy topic because I think it's important, and I feel like you alluded to it earlier. I was asking this question at the convoy. What has been the worst moment for you in terms of dealing with like very unmanageable social challenges during the pandemic? It's like something that you never want to have to experience again. Just
For
because
me
like
personally,
for you personally, yeah. Like whether it was like a family member, whether it was like something at work, or just the kind of unbearable social challenges that came along, not just with lockdowns, but
oh,
also
I,
the
I mean,
propaganda.
yeah, well, some very lighter moments are the fact that I did not witness two of my sons graduating. So two of my sons graduated um, remotely, which was crappy, and I felt crappy for them. I mean, turning 18 and graduating high school is the first important milestone in a person's lifetime, in my opinion. It's the first big one. We have many, but it's a big one. It's probably one of the biggest ones. So I wasn't able to they weren't able to appreciate to enjoy that, and neither was I as part of that. um, I've had problems from work. I mean, I've been my income has suffered, but that's fine. We're still managing. And then I had a big one that I'm unable to bridge the gap right now. I had a blow up in my backyard with a family member over the vaccine, and it was a blow up, and we haven't spoken in over a year now, and I'll find the moment to maybe reconcile, but I'm at that point. At this point, I'm incapable of, and
Mm.
so yeah, I mean, I can think of other things, but I don't even want to make it about me because, like I said, I think I'm pretty strong, and I managed to come through this fairly unscathed. And actually, one of the reasons I came through this unscathed is the power of being in groups. That is powerful. And by I am surrounded in my work community and in my living community and in my YouTube social community by like-minded individuals. And as a group, we supported each other and we made it through. So, I mean, and for me, I actually, at the peak, at the worst part of COVID in 2021, I met an incredible individual named Evan Robertson, and we we went on hiking adventures, and we hiked in the wilderness, and we slept under the stars 100 nights in 2020, when at the worst of the pandemic, and that saved me.
Mm.
Evan, yeah.
There's a lot to be said about how therapeutic it can be to just get back to nature, right? Get some fresh air, go for a walk,
Oh,
and that
and
type of
I'm
stuff.
blessed for that here. I mean, I can see the Rockies from my backyard. I should grab the camera. I can't do it, but I live northwest of Calgary, and that's the other thing. I've been blessed because when I come home, I live in the country, so I can somehow I turn down a certain country road, and then when I'm going down that road, it's like whatever else is gone. And then my phone. This is an iPhone 6 that barely works. So most people have a hard time getting a hold of me, and I can turn it off and disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad. Like I said, I do feel bad. And so I'm just hear me out, people. Here's the context. I'm going hunting on Friday, and I will be gone for 7 days. And that's just to tell you, I wasn't intending to make this movement. I don't want to be the leader of this movement. I apply. It's a lottery to go hunting. I've been applying for this lottery for 5 years. I won the lottery back in June, and I planned this hunting trip, and I'm going hunting. And nothing would make me happier than coming back from hunting next week and finding out that this movement is still going, that I've still inspired people, and that you guys have supported each other and found more courage to tell your story. And if we keep telling the story, they can't ignore the story. I mean, Greg, I don't think they can ignore the story forever. The story is showing up. They cannot ignore, they can try and bury it, but it'll show up in other things. They can't ignore it. It'll show up somewhere else.
And yeah, I really see it as kind of a repetition of the same story. Like I still think the story is what happened at the trucker convoy, and how this regime, which is what I like to call it now, this Trudeau regime, the mask fell off. The proverbial mask has fell off. It's like, wow, so you're ready to sick, police horses on your own people instead of talking to them. That's a pretty big deal. And the fact that the other story on top of that is the media not talking about that. And this is another example where, very organic, very cute, very beautiful Canadian. Like the CBC should be all over this in terms of what the CBC likes to talk about. Oh, look at these diverse Canadians, and they're just standing up. Like, can you imagine if this campaign, I'm not going to call it the campaign, this trend that you haphazardly happened to start, imagine it was you complaining about like a conservative politician like Harper or something like that. Hey, Harper, like, I'm not crazy. The CBC would have been all over this. They would have been gushing.
And actually, you're making me think of something here. I think history will look back at the trucker convoy, and it's more important than we think it is. And history will record that. And some of the people, and it was a pivotal moment that might have saved us, that did save us. And some of the people that I've been talking to lately, the really interesting people, if you really, the ones that get this, are the people who came from behind the Iron Curtain. And so, and I met somebody like that, and a very intelligent, educated lawyer from Red Deer, and we were talking, and she said that the mass psychosis and the tyranny there lasted like 60 years. It's like, think about that. We were manipulated and controlled and denied our rights for 60 years, and the help didn't come from anywhere else, and we knocked down the wall on ourselves and we got out. And she's as an observer of history, as a witness to history, she's convinced that if we hadn't done the trucker convoy, we might have that what's happening in our country could theoretically go on a lot longer than we think. And she's so thankful for the trucker convoy. She thinks that is a pivotal moment. And when I digest that with her, I kind of tend to agree. I think what the truckers did is incredible. It saved us.
I think so too, and the media was running headlines at the same time saying, "Hey, we're bringing back restrictions, but it has nothing to do with these truckers, holding Ottawa hostage. Nothing to do with that at all." Let's go ahead. What?
No. I'm sorry.
Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about. I want to know kind of well, first of all, when are you running for politics?
I've been asked that so many times. You know what? My answer before was always no, for one big reason, which is I didn't want to subject my whole family to this abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And back, and I'm not joking. The question's been asked of me many times in the last 10 years. And basically that was always the answer. I don't want to subject my family and myself to this abuse. And people would try to convince me that, Marty, if you throw your name in there, you will have a network of support, and there will be people that will help you, and the abuse will be manageable. And and I'm realizing that maybe it is manageable. And so this might spark that. I have that desire to be in politics. I do think I could be a voice, and I have in my DNA, my DNA as an engineer might suit me well in politics, because my DNA as an engineer is to find win-wins.
Mm.
I've had to do that my whole life. If I want to put a pipeline through a landowner's land, I'm not gonna do it through brute force. I'm going to negotiate with him and find the agreement. What's the money that can be done? Can I go this way through your land? How about while I'm going through your land, do I reshape it a certain way so that after I'm done, you can have a dugout for your cows and get water? What's the win-win? And so win-win was necessary in my line of work, and I was good at it because it was in my DNA, and maybe it would serve me well. And I think that's one of the things we need in this country. I think Trudeau is the guiltiest of that. That guy thinks win-lose. If you win, I've lost, and he cannot. Win-win does not exist for Trudeau. So, were you asking a serious question, or was it a joking question? Because
It was half serious, half joking.
yeah,
I like to put people on the spot because let me just share my journey getting into Canadian politics. So I didn't know what I was doing, right? But I saw how biased the media was, and I thought, well, this trend isn't going to be reversed unless people do something about it. So, I joined the PPC, I got involved, and I met a lot of like-minded people. And I mean like-minded, almost like we had a similar experience. We knew nothing about politics, but we knew something had to happen. It was clear that, the people representing us in Parliament didn't seem to be actually wanting to truly represent us. And yeah, I've had a lot of like-minded people, as in like we were inexperienced, completely inexperienced, completely naive, in over our heads. I remember at the PPC conference, someone was like, well, we got to make sure to do this and that so we don't get called racist. And I shook my head. I'm like, I'm so sorry, my friend, but you're gonna get called racist no matter what happens. It doesn't matter what you do. You're gonna get labeled. Yeah. Did no one tell you that? And they're like, oh, whoops. But I asked you the question to first of all just plant the seed in yourself and anyone else watching, because I truly think to get our country back, or to get this place back on track, we need politicians. Not even politicians. We don't need politicians. We need real Canadians in the Parliament buildings. That's what we need. And what we have right now is not that. And back to like the juxtaposition of my journey into politics. Before that, I was a professional in Toronto, and you're a professional yourself, so you probably know when you're in the professional world. I was in sales and marketing, so I'm interacting with many different companies, many different individuals. Who am I meeting? I'm meeting bright Canadians who really care about what they're doing. They're super smart. They're super bright. They create win-win scenarios. Like they're hard workers. They're these amazing, competent people who care. And the moment I step into the world of politics and start to kind of start digging and looking around, I see opportunists, I see incompetence, of course, and I just see a bunch of, it's just horrific. And I asked the question, why are there no people in like the downtown Toronto professional core? How come none of these people are making it into politics? It's almost like only like the worst type of narcissist opportunists are making it into the world of politics. And I think if we can simply solve that problem, I don't care if you're left, right, I don't care. If you're a smart professional, start to consider this.
it's actually, you bring up a thought in my head. One of the reasons I haven't run for politics happens to be the fact that in the area where I live, I live in the writing here is called whatever, Cochrane Airdrie or whatever. And so anyways, both federally and provincially, the candidates in my writing have always been business people. We've almost never elected career politicians in this riding, and that's one of the, and they were, and all of the I'll say this in all honesty, that all the people we've elected over the years here have been great representatives of this region and the me in particular. So I couldn't run because I didn't want to run. I didn't want to run against them at the constituency level, just to take away, because they're doing a good job. So if I had it, but now with this experience, and if at an upcoming election one of these incumbents doesn't come back, I might throw my name into the hat. I mean, my PPC incumbent, and I was close to voting PPC last year, was Nadine Wellwood. I don't know if you know her, but
yeah.
So a very smart lady.
She's great, yeah.
And I met Maxime Bernier 3 times. So, and I mean, he almost had me, because I was thinking, what do I value more, the Alberta independence or the attack on my freedoms? And he almost had me on, they both go hand in hand. If you have your freedoms, then you don't need an Alberta independence. So let's work on the freedoms. And so his message of restoring and making sure that our freedoms aren't trampled resonates with me. My caveat, the reason I still couldn't vote for him is unfortunately, after, my opinion now, I've traveled the country, I've done everything. My opinion is that Confederation is an experiment that's failed and won't work. And what Max was saying sort of at a high level is, I think I can make Confederation work. And I'm like, well, for you, in order to make Confederation work, you first need to get elected, and you can't get elected unless you cheat Confederation and make extra promises to Ontario and Quebec. So he's in a catch-22. And but I'm very honest about this. I reapproach every election independently, and it's a fresh start. I mean, during even this one, which I thought was a very bogus call for Trudeau, I went and met Nadine and Max, and then I went and met the my conservative MP and a guy named Tariq as the Mavericks. So I went to talk to everyone, and because I have to do that, because I'm not a hypocrite. I am who I am when I say I educate people, and having an educated, being educated and making an educated decision. So I'm still naive. I still vote I vote for the person I think best represents and is most open to ideas. I'm still naive that way.
No, I mean, we all have our own political journey, but so I do want to ask here before we go. We'll wrap this up soon. Would you consider yourself more right wing, or I think I said libertarian?
Well, everybody else has moved so far to the left that I'm de facto right wing. No, I'm in fact. I have the word liberal in my tagline for Twitter, but I am a classic liberal in the classic sense, trying to progress ideas forward. And I do believe in society having trying to help everybody else. So I'm a liberal in the classic sense. But I'm right wing. I mean, if we're going to go left, right, I'm right. But
sure. So that leads into this question, which is kind of a broad question. I'm just kind of curious what you might think of it. Aside from the Conservative Party, the PPC, the many kind of separatist, Western parties, aside from the different parties, aside from the policies, aside from the rebel news and everything kind of in the right wing sphere, what do you think the right wing is missing in Canada?
Oh, that's a good one. What's the right? I think what the right wing is missing is that it's moving too far to the left and is becoming the left, and what it's missing, the fact is that there is an appetite for a right wing. So if you look at states like Florida and North Dakota and places like that, so there is so it's the true right, true left, and so the right has gone too far to the left, and so I think the right needs to go where it belongs, which is, fiscally responsible and individual responsibilities with a blend of social responsibilities, the proper right wing, and don't get sucked into the left. And I think we're going to get a huge boost that way, because the left is imploding on itself. I mean, it's the left is the left is exposing itself, and we're finally seeing just how ridiculous. I mean, look at the events of this week. Like that guy. Is it in your neck of the woods? The guy with the prosthetic breasts who's going to school or whatever. Like, I mean, you're like, at some point, even parts of the left are going to go, okay, whoa, that's it, right? So, that's my answer. I mean, to be honest, I haven't thought of it too much, but that's my answer. That's my thought.
Yeah. I think that's a great answer. I think I would agree with you, and I think that this is something that is going to be a challenge, because I think that many progressive conservatives, it's kind of an oxymoron, being a progressive conservative. Like, how progressive are we going to be to allow people like this into our schools who have these prosthetic breasts,
But I just want to have another thought on this, though. In fact, the left and the right, the right isn't doing anything wrong per se, brought on a global level. I mean, if you look at the popular vote garnered by the right, the Harper and O'Toole and everybody's done good. So if you wonder why they're not elected, it's not necessarily because of the policy. The whole system is rigged against them. I mean, you guys in Toronto and Montreal have just so many votes, and so do you want to win by changing your policy or changing the game? And at this point, I'm kind of afraid that it's having to change the game. I think if we had real proper proportionate representation, I actually think the right resonates with more Canadians. I mean, it should. Canadians, like, what's the number? Like, it's astronomical. Like 60% of Canadians don't even come from here. We're first generations or second generation, or we're immigrants. Don't come from here. 60% of Canadians weren't even born in Canada, something like that. And we tend to have close family relations and value actually fairly conservative values. So I don't think that in terms of policy, the right is not doing anything wrong. But they're not playing the game. That's perhaps one of the problems. I mean, somebody has asked me that before, that like Calgary voted a very bizarre socialist mayor not too long ago. And people said, like, did they cheat? I'm like, no, they didn't cheat. Because we can see it in the math, we can see it in the ballots and stuff like that. They didn't cheat. They just played the game way better. I mean, they had no scruples. They didn't care if they had to go to the old age home, grab everybody, put them on a bus, and say, "Hey, we're going to Tim Hortons to get donuts. And by the way, we're stopping at the voting station." I mean, they're disgusting that way. And one of the conservative values, or the right wing values, is to play by the rules and to play fairly and to be nice, and that's hurting us. So I don't think we need to necessarily change our rules or values, but we need to play the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great summary. And I think you're absolutely right. When it comes to the actual game of politics, the right wing is getting crushed. Like, we're getting crushed. Yeah. And a good example is, just think of how a left-wing politician will deal with the crisis, and how, a right-wing person will deal with the crisis. A left-wing politician will they'll say, "Oh, did someone on the right wing mess up? Resign, resign, resign." And then the second that a right wing person is criticizing a left wing person, maybe they're yelling at them, it's like, "Oh no, you shouldn't yell at them, you shouldn't criticize them, that's unclassy to do that." That is just how domesticated, like, the left wing establishment has made the right wing. Like, it's like they have our nuts in a jar already. And and I think to summarize it, then we'll move on to another topic. I think the biggest obstacle that the right wing all needs to kind of figure out is we need to break out and destroy the left wing moral framework. So many conservatives are hypnotized to thinking being racist is the worst possible thing you could possibly. No, being a child abuser is worse than that. Okay,
and that's they're doing that to themselves right now. They're doing that to themselves right now, which is, it's hilarious, because I think the progressives got so far that they're actually reversing progress at this point, and it's coming back to bite them. An example of that, let's say the reversal of Roe v. Wade in the U.S. I'm like, hey, don't cry, man. You guys went so far one way that it's coming back, and now it's biting you. And this is not on us. This is on you. So, yeah, interesting.
What are your thoughts? Because I think this is actually relevant, maybe more relevant than most conservatives realize. Are you a man of faith? Do you think Christianity or any type of religion should play a role in like what guides the right wing?
That's a tough question for me. I'm not a person of faith. I think my scientific background now, after 30 years of being an engineer, and people always say that. People try to convince me that, hey, Marty, you can reconcile that. You exist because there's a greater power. I'm like, I have a hard time with that one. So I'm more of keep the religious story out of the picture. And it tends to be a trap and very divisive. I don't talk religion. I respect everybody for their religion. I got no problem with that. But me personally, I'm not a religious person.
Sure. I think that's a fair answer. However,
I'd have to be prepared for that if I run, right? So
no, well, I'm still tumbling down the political rabbit hole here, but I feel like right now the popular religion is this sort of progressive wokeism. It's this religion of like, if you don't pay the carbon tax, then the world is going to end. If you are a straight white man, you are a sinner. Like, this isn't officially a religion, but all of the characteristics of a religion are there. And I feel like the right simply cannot compete unless they have something that powerful. And I would argue that Christianity is the closest possible sort of thing to kind of fill that gap, but we don't have to
No, that's a great observation. I mean, the climate alarmist group at this point is very similar to a religion. I mean, they're making a claim that has to be supported and that can't be proven otherwise. I'll argue that. I mean, you can't. No matter what, the CO2 model, whatever model you want, you can't prove them scientifically because you would need two Earths, one here, one there, and you'd need to do the test. That's me very pragmatically speaking. So I have to take something on face value. And you're right, religion is that. So I get what you're saying. It's sort of like both sides need. If both sides need a fiscal policy, both sides need a family policy, and both sides need a dogma. So I don't know, something, I'm oversimplifying it, but our religion versus theirs, and you're saying that the left has a wokeism that has become in de facto a religion. I buy that. I buy that. That's a very interesting concept.
I love science. Don't you believe in the science? TM.
Oh, don't go there with me. That's a no.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah, that's its whole other podcast that I'm sure we could have. Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that you wanted to talk about? Or should we just...
Well, we talked about me. I guess we'll close it on a segment. So are you done with politics then, or are you going to run again, you think?
Oh, wow. So I'm certainly not done with politics, but I don't see myself running anytime in the immediate future. I think that I want to be very involved politically with commentary, and especially with stirring the pot with Canadian culture in a kind of directly adjacent way to politics. But I could see myself running in the future, but not anytime soon. I wanna continue to I want to continue doing some good content creation, do more journalism stuff, kind of document what's actually happening here.
And we need that, actually. We need your style of journalism, so we definitely need that. But on a scale of 1 to 10, what was your 10 being positive? What was your experience, your political journey?
Oh my God. I was a zero. I couldn't believe it, man. I was running in a very leftist riding in downtown Toronto, Parkdale High Park. I had communists, like the Communist Party, protesting against me, calling me a white supremacist and all this, handing out like flyers. I had grown men running for the NDP and the Green Party turn their backs on me at a debate every time that I stood up to
God.
spoke. I had 18-year-old volunteer being like shouted at and physically intimidated. Oh, you're a racist, get out of here. Like he's an 18-year-old volunteer. I had to go up to him and be like, yeah, it's a volunteer. He's 18. Like, do you mind? Do you want to talk about
Yeah.
something? Oh, you're running away
Yeah.
now? Great. I also had a man of like Indian heritage who was another volunteer, and he was getting stuff like thrown at him and stuff. Um, so it was
You're
funny.
not encouraging me. You know that, right?
Oh crap! But it's strengthened my resolve, and
Yeah.
it really the experience really was at the time. I wasn't really like processing it that much. I was focused on the campaign, focused on whatever it is, shaking hands, trying to make a good impression, trying to represent the policies and represent myself properly, and change minds and be persuasive or whatever. And it wasn't until like months after the campaign that I realized like that's really taken a toll on like my soul,
Oh,
just
no
to kind
kidding.
of
No kidding.
like go through all that. But speaking to when I put you on the spot to ask if you're going to run for politics, I think another aspect to it, I'm 33, and you can look at it at like a 5, 10 year down the road. Do I want to spend time doing this? Ooh, it's going to inconvenience me. There's going to be a lot of this. But I think of it more as like, what do I want to leave behind here? I'm not going to live forever, and part of the reason why I had to run and start getting involved in politics is it's like, this doesn't look like a place where I'm going to want to raise my kids. Like it doesn't look like it's going to be a place where I want to raise my kids. So well, I guess I need to get involved in politics. Like that was kind of like my logic in joining. So,
But that's good. But and actually, I think one way to sort of let's remind ourselves. Remember earlier, my opinion, the four pillars of a good democracy. The government, the opposition, the media, and then the scientists that provide commentary on the policies. And so, for us to have a successful democracy, those four things need to work. So what you're doing today is making one of those key pillars work. Keep this kind of journalism is an important part. And I will keep doing what I'm doing, which is helping people think critically and educate. And somebody else will be the politician, and we both play a role as opposition and as critics. So I think there's in my mind, there are those four ways to make our democracy successful, and so we all have a part to play. And so, don't think that running is the only way you'll make this. You'll make your future better for your kids. Do you have kids, by the way? Can I ask?
yeah, of course. I don't have kids, not yet.
Yeah,
Soon though.
because that's something that people have asked me. It's weird, but I almost became an empty nester here. My youngest is 18. I have 4 kids. And pragmatically, I always told myself I have 18 years to prepare them to go out into the world. But lately, and I always thought once they're gone into the world, I can sort of step back and I don't have to battle. But now I have to continue this battle because my sons and daughter are stepping into this world as adults, but they're going to need help because the world they're stepping in is pretty nasty right now.
It sure is. It sure is. So
Let's not end on a bum note. Let's end on something cool.
something cool. Well, let's talk about your outdoors channel. That's pretty cool. You got like 20,000 subscribers almost. You're doing hiking videos and things like this. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's good closing. No, it's YouTube. I'm old and I discovered these technologies. Actually, the way I discovered YouTube was really weird because at work, we used to write out procedures when we had to do stuff. And then one day I'm like, why am I writing this out? I have a buddy, Norm. I'm like, Norm, you're about to change that part over there. I'm going to film you while you change it. And this was like literally a decade ago. And then it's like, okay, now I have this video. I need to edit it. And then where do I store it? And then I started practicing with YouTube, and I was just putting stuff on YouTube. Nice. And the next thing you know, I go on a hike and I put a quick video of me on YouTube, and then it's like cling, cling, cling. You got people watching and subscribing. It was just this weird thing, and I love it. Like it allows me. It's an outlet for me. It's a creative side for me. And it's been, to be honest, it's been a fantastic way of meeting people, and it's extremely rewarding. I mean, it's I make it a point to engage with as many people when I get comments, and people have told me, like, I've introduced them to the sport, I've helped them out, and I give honest feedback. I'm not trying to make, I make $100 a month on YouTube, so I'm not in it for the money. I'm not in this for the money. I'm I like helping people, solving problems, and doing things that are fun. And yeah, the YouTube channel, if people want to go look at it, don't go look at it just randomly, but if you're ever thinking of coming to Alberta to go hiking or do something, then go look at my channel. Because quite honestly, if you type in if you say Jasper and pick a name of a trail, I've done it, and there'll be a little video about it.
Very cool. Very cool. The link to Marty's outdoors channel. It's in the description below, the link to his channel, so you can go check that out.
Yeah, it's just Marty Up North. I mean, if you go to YouTube and you type in Marty Up North, God, I hope I'm not trending, but yeah, that's you'll find me quickly.
No, it's great that you started this trend, because you've probably noticed this already. The media is going to try to like find something about you and like smear you, but they probably haven't found anything. They're like, oh wow, he's a really sweet Canadian dad, loving family. He's got an outdoors channel.
He swears a lot in his outdoor channel, but that's who he is, and that's not. There
you go. Yeah. Yeah. So extremist.
Yeah, he's got a beard. He's got the extremist beard. Maybe I'll shave the beard and throw everybody off. Ooh, that would be something. I should do that. No, I should do something radical. I should go with the big. I should do the
handlebar mustache, the handlebars.
Yeah.
No, well, hey man, it's been a pleasure, Marty. Anything else? Anything else you wanted to plug or talk about, or?
No, it's all good, man. Bring me back on the show. Let's pick a different topic some other day, and then bring me back. I'd love to come back. Absolutely. This was really good. Really fun.
Amazing. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. That's been Marty. We'll put it one more time up on the screen here. The tweet that started it all. It's just a banger tweet. And I'm happy to see it go so viral. And we'll chat again soon. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks, Marty.
Cheers, everyone.
Till next time. Bye.
All right, but I'm just going to knock off real quick. It's 11:30, and I'm